Welcome back to another episode of Simple Robotics, the podcast. I'm your host, Monique. This episode is being sponsored by Autodesk, and I was joined this week by Tiara Little. Tiara and I talked a little bit about the importance of peer-to-peer networking, and it's something I've talked about with other guests that I've had on the show, and I've talked about in just other capacities, but it's something that I believe Tiara and I do very well. We connected through social media a couple years ago, so having her on has been a long time coming. Much like myself, she went to school for animation but had a pivot into production management. So during this episode, we talk a lot about her trajectory because she has been able to get out of like the entry level production management bubble that I am trying desperately to break out of. And, we are around the same age, and it's just really inspiring to sit down and talk with her and hear how she navigates interviews and letting people know the opportunities that she wants to obtain and experience, and then also getting those opportunities. So it was just really, really good. This episode also, I think, could be beneficial for people who are not trying to be boxed into one specific thing. Like just because you did production management doesn't mean you can't go on like the development side, can't mean you can't go on the executive side or recruiting or, anything like that. So I just really think you guys are going to like this episode, and I will not hold you any longer. Let's start the show. Thank you, Tiara, for joining me again. I am super excited to have you. I feel like this has been a time or while in the making as well because did we get connected through Black and Animated? I know we got connected on the internet and social media. And I feel like you were on their episode, and maybe Bree was like, hey, you need to such and such or something. And then like you reached out to me because you had some stuff that you were doing too that was a bit similar to Diverse Tunes. And maybe we could go into that about how much of that stuff, if you're still doing it or not. But yeah, so I do remember you being on that show, and then I was like, oh, well, gotta let time pass before I can have you on. And then, this global pandemic happens and whatever. But we ended up both being at Netflix together, which was exciting for me. I was like, oh, hey, there's people here that I kind of know too. And I just kind of remember your title change journey at Netflix. Like you went from having one type of email address to another type of email address, and then the little Slack bio was shifting a little bit. We can get into it too, because I'm like, I don't feel like you were a coordinator. Maybe you could have been a supervisor at one point, but I feel like you got to move around in that company too, which was pretty dope. So just for like starters, I ask all my guests to just, introduce themselves a little bit. So we'll just start off from where are you from and where are you based currently?
Yeah, so Tiara Little from New Jersey, moved out here, I'm going to say it was like 2015. And now I live in Burbank.
In reading your stuff, I was like, I did not know she was from Jersey. She's a Jersey girl. And I was like reflecting a little bit. There's someone that a Twitter person, and I hope to have him on the show too at some point. And we're chatting, and he says, "Oh, something about moving to California." I'm like, "Oh, where are you from originally?" And he's like, "Baltimore." I was like, "Another East Coaster." I was like, "Let me find out." Like low key, a bunch of the people that I've been connecting with on Twitter that I know are in California are like East Coast originators. And just to keep on that note, what was that transition and shift like for you? Because I know that I plan on having a bigger conversation about this, but I always just love to hear migrating from the East Coast to the West Coast, that adjustment period when you finally felt settled. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I would say for me, moving out here, like I always knew I was going to move out here. I just didn't know what that timeline was going to look like. So I went to school also on the East Coast. I went to Rhode Island School of Design. And so East Coast had like always been my life. And I had like this image of what I thought it would be out here. Like I pictured Burbank as just like this place that had like warehouses, and those warehouses were the studios, and they were just kind of like all lined up nicely on the street. Obviously, that's not what it's like, but so I always just kind of like had this vision of coming out here. And then once I got to my senior year, you're doing that process of applying to jobs, trying to see where you're going to land. I totally thought it was going to take me, a good few years before I could actually make that move out here. And little did I know that 2 weeks after graduation, I would be moving out here to start working at
Nice.
Nickelodeon as an intern. So it's pretty fast. It was one of those things where it's like, all right, if you're going to do it, you might as well just like go all in and do it and figure it out once you're there. So I took that as my opportunity to get out there, get settled, try to, meet some people. And I think having that extra pressure of feeling like, it's really just me out here, like all my family's back home. I need to make this work. So it really just kind of made me sort of like hustle harder a little bit because I wanted to stay out there. I didn't want to come all the way out here just to have to move back. So, definitely had some like stressful moments and just kind of getting used to the area and just the way things were out here. It's just like a lot bigger than what I'm used to. But you just find a way to make it work. You just kind of like survive. And I think coming into this industry and having a really supportive first crew that I got a chance to work with, that also helped a lot because it made that transition a lot easier knowing that I had, some people that I could rely on. I also moved out here with my college roommate, so wasn't entirely alone. I had like someone familiar and then was meeting a lot of new people. So that made it a bit easier to kind of find my place in the industry and figure out like what do I want to do here? What does this look like? And how do I make that happen?
Are there any people from that first internship that you're still like in communication with? You don't have to be like super close to them, but they're still like around or something.
Yeah, I would say like a good chunk of them. And a lot of them actually ended up at Netflix too at some point. So there was like some overlap. I'm like, oh, hey, you're here. But yeah, I would say like, I feel like there are about like 4 or 5 of us that came directly from my college into the Nick Turn program. So I had like that group of people and then the people that we actually met, in that internship year, they kind of scattered about, but we all kind of still stayed, I would say, like relatively in contact or like following each other's social media. So, we can kind of see everyone moving throughout the industry and finding their way. And that was just also really cool to watch and just seeing like how different everyone's paths were, even though we kind of like started at the same point. Everyone kind of went into their own directions, but we all either overlapped in some way or, collaborated together or found another way to work together.
What did you major in and what was your experience like while there in undergrad, I'm assuming too?
So going to RISD, that was like my awakening where, you go from being the only art kid in your school and then you go to RISD and everybody was the only art kid in their school. And so now it's like, how do I stand out? And they're all super good too. So now you feel like that pressure of wanting to like meet those standards and really just kind of figure out like, who am I as an artist? What is the type of art I want to create? And I went there for animation specifically because by that point I knew I wanted to be in animation. So I was trying to find places that had like a really solid animation program. I knew it would be like a big, I don't know, not risk, but like the odds of like actually getting into RISD was like very slim just because it's such a competitive place. So, I definitely had my other schools where I was like, if this thing doesn't pan out, which I'm about like 20% sure it could probably pan out if I'm lucky, at least I know I can go to these other places and still do animation and figure it out. But when I did get in and get there, it was like, okay, now I'm here. I need to get through this. And so like there's the getting in, that's like the one barrier. And then once you getting there, it's like, now how do I stay here? How do I survive the 4 years? Because now we're on a different level. There are different expectations, and again, I'm so grateful for like the roommates that I had because they kind of really got me through those 4 years. But it was challenging at times. And I think I really struggled at first because I was definitely a more traditional artist where I like to draw like figures and portraits and I work with things like pastels. And then coming into RISD, that's such a place that they're so focused on like the conceptual part of it. Like it's a great school for if you really want to be like the big thinkers, like the that influencer with like the ideas, and you're really making things happen, and you're playing with the process. And for me, that was just like a completely different way of thinking. And so like it really challenged me in that way to really like push the way that I worked and the types of things that I created, and really just trying to like figure out like what is my voice.
You
Mm.
shared that you met someone that basically changed the path of like your career, your pursuits in animation. Um, let's hear the story. Who was this person and why was it so like pivotal for you?
It was funny because it was something that I just was not expecting. And like, I'm one of those people where, like, once I decide I want to do something, like, I'm on that path. Nothing stands in my way. I'm just kind of like bulldozer going through until I get
Mm-hmm.
to that thing that I want. And so, like, up until that point, I'm like in RISD. I know I'm going into animation. I know I'm training to be an artist. The next phase for me was figuring out like what type of artist in the industry do I want to be? Do I want to do character designs? Do I want to do color? Do I want to do storyboards? And like I just could not
Mm.
decide because I wanted to do all of it. And so it was one of those things where I was like running out the clock. Like it's senior year, I need to start putting out these job applications. I need to figure out like what is it that I'm going to do. And my senior animation class at the time, like that teacher, she was bringing in different professionals from the industry to kind of talk about their roles and just what they do. And one year she brought in a producer. And just listening to this producer talk about like what they do and how they support the crew, like what their role is, it just really resonated with me because it felt like it was like directly in
Mm-hmm.
line with my skill set and the things that I felt that I was strong at personally. And I really worked well with people. It gave me a chance to see the entire pipeline from start to finish. You really get to be there to help like support their vision, but also really learn the ins and out of the industry. And so I felt like production made more sense to go into because at least, if I get into production, I can see firsthand like what is it like to be an artist, but without having to be an artist. And, once I got and, moved out here, started the internship, I think something that I quickly realized was like when it comes to my art, that's something that I'm very precious with. And I couldn't see myself doing it
Yes.
on like a production timeline and working on other people's projects. So I was like,
Yes.
I'm going to keep my art for myself. And I still keep my art for myself. But to make a living, I'm totally fine doing production because that's something that I still love and I'm good at it. So why not have the best of both worlds instead of, tainting this one world for me that I care so much about. And, I never wanted to get to the point where I like
Mm-hmm.
resented making things. So that's kind of like what put me onto
I
that
feel
new
like my
pathway.
reflection is talking back to me. I'm sorry. Like I'm the exact same way, and I've said it to for my listeners so many times. I know they're probably like, "Okay, we heard you," the first couple of times. Um, I guess just to keep on that track, like we're gonna take a deeper dive into your trajectory, I would say, of working up the production management ladder. You are a person that has made it out of like the entry level cycle of just constantly being a PA for
Mhm.
a bunch of productions, and then finally you're a coordinator, but then getting out of that coordinator, into like more mid level and higher up roles and stuff like that. So I would like to know a bit, how has your race and or gender um maybe helped, aided, maybe there were challenges that you were facing because of these identities and intersections? Was there any sort of that, like how'd you navigate yourself with trying to move up in this industry that we already know is very white male, but when it comes to production management, it's actually very white woman centered, or that's just who's
Mhm.
there in a lot of these positions, and just constantly or maybe constantly having to show that you are qualified, you have the experience, you're knowledgeable, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's like a great great
Oh
thing
wait,
to
I'm going to
talk
interject and
about.
say we're not
And I would
shading
say
any
like
of the
for
studios that you worked at. So you can just say my former employer. We're not trying to be like anything like that, because again, we're both on the job hunt, all stuff, being respectful, but like, just being
right.
also truthful, and transparent at the same time.
Right. And, like keeping it general and just kind of like looking at the industry as a whole, I would say like what I've run into is like on the positive side, I feel like I've been able to make really strong connections with other, people of color, women, even people just like around my age in the industry. Cause I think there's also that component of it too, where with the way that my career went, I kind of moved up pretty quickly. And so you have that added, extra pressure of like wanting to really show that you can handle these higher roles, even though like you may be younger than somebody else that's been in that role for X amount of years. Um, so for me, I think that just kind of like strengthened the bonds that I had with people that could kind of relate to that experience and understand what that's like and building those support systems and, finding a mentor and things like that. And then on the flip side of that, I've definitely run into those situations where, I think it's kind of subtle depending on where you're at. But I would say it's usually subtle in that, maybe it's in an interview and it's in a way that a question is formed, or like maybe you give an answer and the way that they respond to it. You can definitely tell that there are those undertones of, oh, well, I don't know if you can do it. I don't know if I want to take that risk. And I think that's what it kind of comes across of, why should we give this to you when, there might be some other people who are more tried and tested or have people to kind of like back them in that area. And I think quickly for me, it was one of those things where it's like, if I'm in a position where, like, let's say I'm interviewing for a role that either I haven't done before or something that I know that I really want, which in any role that I was in, if I knew I wanted like to be promoted or something like that, I made that very clear. As soon as I knew I wanted it, I made it clear to whoever can make that decision. I just said, letting you know whenever you're ready, I'm ready to do this thing, checking in with them, making sure that they're clear that this is the direction I want to go. But in those rooms where you're trying to like even just get that initial job, and let's say you don't have the experience to back it up, I think you still bring that confidence with you of, I need to be very clear to them that I believe in myself and I know I can do this job. And so that's not up for debate. That's not what we're talking about here. You can have like your own personal thoughts about that, but like I know where I stand on that. And if I say I can do something, I can do it. So, I've definitely had some situations where there's been a bit of back and forth, and I just don't bow down at that point. I still hold my ground. And it's one of those things where it's like, you can either see me where I'm at and we can kind of move forward from here, or, maybe this just isn't the place or the role for me. And that's fine too. And, we go our separate ways and we figure out what that next step is. But I think it always kind of started at that point of like, I need to kind of come in with like my own type of confidence and belief in myself and my abilities. And it's like, I know the work that I can do. And really what I'm here for is just to kind of like show that to you and make that clear. And either you're on board with it and you're not. And if you're not on board with it, then I just don't think maybe we're the best fit together. So that's fine. We can be, it's a business, it's how it works. You're looking for something. I'm also looking for something, you want like a mutual relationship and whatever this partnership is going to be. And if it doesn't work out on one side, then, that's when you just have to make that choice of, is it worth going forward with knowing this is what I'll get, or do I kind of hold back and wait for the next thing, even though that may mean it
Yeah,
takes
yeah.
longer to get it?
Yeah, going in with that confidence is so, so very important because, as to your point, there will be some like the way that they answer questions for sure, or the questions that they ask you. It's like almost to trip you up a little bit. It's just testing that confidence, So, in really standing
Mm-hmm.
firm with that. How was it while in Netflix? I know that you shifted into the education and programming stuff, and I was really
Mm-hmm.
enjoying that. While I was there, I feel like you were coordinating a lot of things that finally felt helpful for people in production management like myself. And like there was even like
Mm-hmm.
I think it started right before like our batch of layoffs. There was like Google Sheets training. And I was like, yes, because I'm always here. Like, does anyone? Okay, no one. I'm going to Google and I'm like texting my friends that are, business people, whatever, like, BAs and MBAs degrees and stuff. And I'm like, do y'all know this Excel formula? Do you know how because I'm like struggling. So I really like that stuff like that was starting to be implemented because a lot of the studios, understandably so, cater to artists and their growth and development. But for
Hmm.
production management, it's just really hard to get like in the field mentorship and just like training so that you can grow and continue to move forward. And something that's often overlooked is as simple as Google and like Excel sheets and formulas and stuff like that. It's like, I know as an individual, you take some responsibility. Maybe you can go seek that stuff out. But to work at studios and companies that they do that for employers in this column, but not these employers. I'm like, come on now, So, how what made you make the leap to go from production management into that education and programming space in the first place?
For me, I've always like I followed kind of like my curiosity even throughout my career. So it's like I knew the general direction I wanted to go in, and that started off as production. And I was like, okay, I'm here. Let's see how far this goes. Let's see how the roles start to change the higher up you go, and like what are the parts of the roles that I like, and maybe what are the parts that I don't like so much. And so as I was kind of like making my way up from like PA to coordinator to PM, you start getting closer to where it's like, okay, so I know my options from here are really like producer and producer, line producer, AP or something like that. So, kind of looking at like what my producer did, and she's amazing as a producer, Amanda
Oh, right.
McCann.
Sorry,
And
I
just
was
kind
just
of
talking to her.
understood.
So
Yeah,
she gave me
that's
some
right.
real good, like, kind of like uh professional advice and stuff like that. Like, it was really like whenever this episode comes out, but like the last week, I was like, yeah, Amanda, I'm kind of going through it. I don't know what to do. Like, what do you think about what's going on? And yeah, she was great. So I could only imagine what working with her was
Amazing,
like.
yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm so fortunate to work with her, and she's like really who brought me into Netflix. At the time I was just at Disney as a coordinator, and she was the one that was like, "We have this PM role. I think you would be great for it." And she really fought
Yeah,
for me to
from
get into
coordinator to
there. So,
PM, that's like
I owe so
unheard
much
of.
to her. Yeah, so always grateful. And then I also loved it when she also came over to artist management, which is what the education team was under. So I was like, this is just perfect place. We're still kind of working together in our own ways. But when I was in as her PM and I was starting to look at, okay, this is what it would mean to be a producer. Is that what I want to do? I think I started to feel like I was getting further away from some of the parts that I liked, which was I like seeing the creative. I still like really having that like hands on the ground connection with the coordinators and the artists. And it's not that you don't get that stuff as a producer, but your priorities are different. You're looking more at the bigger picture. You need to be more, focused on kind of like that business aspect, and you're more of a kind of not like a middleman, but you are that in between, between the crew and the executives and what that looks like. And so it's just a whole different world, in my opinion. And so I was like, okay, well, what are the things that I do like? And, because of some of that stuff I did outside of work with like Animation Network and my no hiatus, and I had already kind of been leaning towards something more in outreach or talent development. I wanted to do something in education and training. Didn't know what that looked like yet because it didn't exist yet as at Netflix at least. So I was like, oh, maybe I should like go into recruitment. That might be more my speed. Um, and so again, like made myself clear where I was like, I like to stay in production, but I'm also open to this other thing if an opportunity comes up. So that was kind of known. And I would say it was around that time, probably like a year into the role, that our head of production on our production executive team, they had a coordinator spot open up. And that's when they reached out to me saying like, we think you might be good for this. What do you think? And I was like, I don't even know what a production executive does. You're going to have to walk me through that. And so again, it's kind of similar to like what I was doing as a PM, but it was just again on just like a different level. So now I flip over to the studio side instead of being attached to one project, I'm attached to like 6 or 8. And I get to be in that, position of like a guide and help provide resources, look at the infrastructure as like the studio as a whole versus one individual project. And it felt like I had more impact there. So I was like, you know what, that's interesting. Let's follow this curiosity. Let's try it out, see how it goes. And so that kind of got me, like, got my foot in the door to be on the studio side, which I think is like a great opportunity if people can make that switch, because it does look different from being in your show bubble and what that looks like. I think at times there, depending on the studio you're at, there might be a bit more job security in a role like that. But it really gave me a chance to see, like, okay, do I like being on this side? I did like being on that side, but then again, I wasn't sure if long term being a production executive is what I wanted to do, because it was still taking me away from the things that I liked, which was the creative and the people. So, as a production executive, you don't get that same crew bonding. You're sort of like more of an outsider where it's like you're helping these teams, but you're not really a part of these teams. And so I was starting to miss that again. And then that's when they started talking about starting an education and training team under artist management. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So how do I get over there? Again, making it very known that, yeah, if you're looking for someone, I'm interested. And so once they hired a director for that position, they put me in contact with him. And what he really liked about my experience was the fact that I came from production. And so that was an area that he also really wanted to focus on. And, while I didn't know as much about like the education and training side, that was something that I could learn and figure out. So, he thought it would be like a good combination to have those two and bring me onto the team. And then that's what ended up happening. And, I loved doing that work. I was always excited to come in and just figure out like, how can I collaborate with the people who are here? What are the things that like the resources or the tools or the people I can connect them with to kind of just like help them elevate and help them get to where they want to go. And that was always that kind of like the center for me, is like, how can I help these people be even better than what they already are? And, how do I support that? And so that's really what brought me
Do
over
you
to that
feel that you
team.
would return to doing work like that in a professional setting if the opportunity kind of if you came across the opportunity, if the opportunity came across you, would you go back to that?
Yeah, I would definitely go back. I mean, I love being in a talent development space. I feel like I'm one of those people where like I have a few things that I like. Like I still love production, would happy to do that again. I did enjoy being an executive. I think I would probably want to switch over to creative or, a development executive if I had to go back into that world. And then, I love talent development and education and training. So really helping people find their own pathway and helping them up level and build the skills that they need. So I always kind of
Mhm.
like leave those doors open because I don't know where this career is going to take me, what it's going to look like in the next 10 years.
We have no idea where this industry is going to take itself, actually, like at this point. So I just wanted to hear just some of your thoughts, about this was just been, and I know it's like a cycle that every so often or whatever industries and the economy and all sorts of these things type of
Mm-hmm.
happen. I think maybe I had just graduated college when there was like a whole bunch of like massive DreamWorks layoffs and stuff like that at that time. So, I mean, what are your thoughts and feelings about this? Like, we're seeing a lot of entities being stopped mid production, during pre-production,
Mm-hmm.
as stuff is being close to being completed and released. We're seeing things that were out there in the universe being taken and removed from streaming platforms. With the amount of layoffs that's happened too, there's at the moment just not jobs for all these people from animation. And so
Right.
just like, yeah, just giving you an opportunity just to kind of freestyle, just whatever.
Yeah. This industry, oh, where do I start? Um, I mean, I agree. It's like it's a pendulum. It swings. You have your highs and you have your lows. And even when I was starting off, like when I first got to Nickelodeon, they were going through a bunch of shows shutting down, and even the show that I came onto was shutting down. So it's not something that was completely unfamiliar to me, but I would say within this last year or so, this was probably like the most extreme version of it that I've experienced personally. And because I've been able to kind of move around in Netflix, I've had a chance to see it at different, from different angles. And like, I know what it feels like to be on the show side. And then I also know what it feels like to be that, one of the executives in the room and having to tell a show, we're sorry, we have to stop production on this. And then being outside of that, being in artist management, and then, trying to connect with people who are going through this tough time or are concerned about, am I going to have a job tomorrow when I come in, but still at the same time trying to create, events or things for them to try and keep their morale up and keep hope and, give some semblance of like a potential future. And I would say like it's, I'm not a fan of what's going on personally. I think what's hard for me is that like at heart, I always
Mm.
see myself as an artist, and to see years of work that people, put their heart and soul into and have dedicated so much time, and to see how like easily it can just be gone. That's hard for me to wrap my head around. And I can imagine being in that position, and I would never want to be in that position. And so, like, my heart breaks for people who have experienced that and have to go through that. And, I would love to see projects be given more of an opportunity to like find their footing and thrive, because I don't think we're giving them enough time to really like build that audience, build that following. Um, they just need time to kind of like percolate and grow, and the word of mouth needs to spread. And I think we're moving a bit too fast, and I think that comes from us. Now we're treating it like content, and that like that's not my favorite word, but I think there's an automatic like association of like this is something that's like very disposable because I can just make more of it. But there are people behind this that are not disposable, and they're putting all their, creative and physical energy into making these things. So when you just kind of treat it as something that's like, well, toss that out the window, get the next thing in here. What does that say to people that we're trying to bring into this industry and say, we want to make your stuff? But at the same time, if I'm someone who's bringing my idea or something that's precious to me in here, would I trust you as a studio to like
Mm.
give it that same care? So I think that's kind of like where we're at right now with, we want to keep making these great stories with great people and new voices, but at the same time, I think we need to be considerate of how our current actions of like what we're doing, like what that message is, because I don't think it's very positive. And I think we can get back to a better place, a better direction, but I think it's gonna take us some time to get there for sure. So I want to be hopeful and say like things can change. I just don't know what that
Yeah.
timeline looks
Yeah,
like.
that was really good. I think we're gonna leave this part of the show right there and pivot into talking
Mm-hmm.
a bit about some of your favorite shows and movies. And you know what? You triggered some
Ooh.
stuff that I completely forgot about. I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. But we'll start with this show that I did start watching way back in maybe season 2 of this podcast, and I just never revisited. So I was back in like 2019, and that is My Hero Academia. Why is that one of your favorite shows?
I don't know. I think it's a fun premise, like a fun concept. I like the idea of like, you can have the superpower, but like, it's not going to be just like the straight superpower. Like, there's some kind of weird thing that goes along with it. And I like that they're kind of these quirks and, you know, I don't know. I just enjoy it. Like anything I can just sit down, put on. I love a good underdog story, and it just grew on me when I watched it. And it's one of those things where like you want to be a part of that world, and you're like, well, what would my quirk be? What would my power be? And what would be the drawback of it or the limitations on it? And I think when you can make stuff like that, that makes you want to be a part of it. Like that's my favorite.
Do you have a favorite moment from that show?
Ooh, do I don't know. That's a hard one. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I mean, maybe when Deku first gets his powers, you see him working so hard and like he's just like not giving up, and you're like, oh, he'll get there. Keep pushing, keep striving, and when he does finally get it, just so rewarding because it also feels like you've earned it too. So maybe that'll be it. But I'm sure there's other, more
That's
flashier
okay.
moments that I'm like, oh
That one
yeah,
jumped out to you
forgot about that
first
one.
in your memory bank. The another show is Carol and Tuesday. Now, I didn't know what this was at first, and then I Googled it and I was
Oh,
like, I put that on my list and completely forgot that it's sitting there. And I saw on Instagram this one, like, she's an influencer, and she was saying, like, I guess, I don't know, December, she tries to blast through her watch list for like all the platforms. Like, where do you get the time to do that? That's, do you know how much stuff I put on
I
my
know.
list
That's
on
impressive.
all of the platforms. I just, maybe that's just some sort of like makes me feel like I did something because I added it to my list, but I don't watch anything. I watch
Hmm.
the same stuff over and over. Why is this show one of your favorites?
It's just so good. Like the music, the friendship
Wait,
between
what
the
is it
two of
about?
them. So it's kind of like about these two girls who are kind of like from different social classes, I would say. One is kind of like running away from home, other has kind of been on her own, and it's kind of set in the backdrop of, I think they're living on Mars, and Earth has kind of become this,
Mm.
dystopic place. And so the one girl that's from Earth is considered like an immigrant there. And these two girls pretty much find each other through their music, and it really follows their journey and pretty much making it from like these independent artists to getting on a more international stage. And they have the tropes of, you got the music competition, you got the rival, and it's just like such a nice, feel good, wholesome show to watch. And soundtrack, absolute banger. Play that all the time, and they just have, the story is, to me, it's just written really well. I definitely have my moments where I'm like, I can feel it in like my heart and my bones. I'm like, this is the stuff I want to see more of, and I would totally recommend it if you haven't seen it
Okay.
yet. It's just that good.
I'm gonna have to move it up on my list or something like that. I'm making like list of lists, which is like insane. That's the point I'm at. So this other show you put, didn't remember the name at all. I would not have been able to identify the show by the name, but once I looked it up, I was like, I haven't seen that show in ages. I don't even know where I could go to watch it. Maybe YouTube? Like I don't know. So that is Code, what's it, Lyoko? Tell the people what it's about.
I don't even know if I could explain what it was about as clearly anymore, because it was one of those things where I watched growing up. But what I remember that stood out to me was the fact that it was really my first time seeing 2D and 3D mixed together. So it's like following these group of kids, and they're able to kind of like go into this more digital 3D world, and it had a very stylistic, almost anime style to it. And I just remember like whenever that was on, I was like, I gotta watch this, because it just like blew my mind in terms of just like how it was made. I had just hadn't seen anything like that before. And again, it had like a cool world that I was like, it'd be cool if I could be a part of that. And what if I can just kind of switch between 2D and 3D? And um, yeah, it was on so long ago. I wouldn't even know. Probably YouTube, like you said,
It's
would
on
be my
Netflix. I
best bet
just
of where
found
to
it.
find it. But
Allegedly, it's on there, so
is it? Okay.
watch it for the
I might have to
holidays.
rewatch it
It's saying
then.
that there's 4 seasons,
Yeah.
so have at it. Have at it.
Oh my gosh, 4 seasons.
Yeah. So, we're gonna move on to your movies, and your movie list was really good because I haven't talked about any of these movies before. So let's just start with Tangled. Why is that one of your favorite movies?
I just like with Tangled, it's one of those things where like I could put it on, rewatch it as many times. Like I like the music, I like the characters. I like that I don't know, they're like not the perfect version of like what their typical tropes are. And, with Rapunzel, she's a little bit quirky. And then Flynn Rider, definitely not our typical prince. And Mother Gothel, she's got a lot going on, but you can't look away from like everything that she's doing. And so it's just like very feel good for me, and love the story of it. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things where I was like, this is for some reason now one of
I
my
remember, I
favorites.
think I saw that one in theaters. And originally I wasn't too crazy about going to see it, but I was like, whatever. And I would say that I really liked visual treatment with it, like all the flowers and being out in the earth, and this just was so
Mhm.
like really painterly with it, you know, and it's as
Yeah.
CG as it is in terms of the Pixar style and all that sort of stuff. It still had a lot of softness to it, excluding characters,
Mhm.
completely excluding characters, and I just really can appreciate that for what it is. It's not one that I've seen often, though. I will say that maybe I've seen it like 3 times or something, which is almost even a lot. But a movie that I have seen a lot is definitely one of my favorites. As problematic as it may be, is Pocahontas. Why is it one of your favorites? No one has
Mhm.
ever said this on the show, so this makes me really, really. This makes like 5-year-old me very happy right now.
Same, same. I mean, for me, it's like that's the OG Disney movie. I was like, run it back, put it on. It just I love Pocahontas as a character. She just felt like very strong to me. Love the setting. And I also visually just loved how it treated. Like my mind always goes back to that. I think it's when they're doing like the Savages sequence and you get like the strong blues and orange and it's like just very intense and she's running through the forest and she's trying to like stop them from killing John Smith and I'm just like this is intense. And there are a
Yes,
few intense
yes,
moments in that movie which I mean you don't see a lot. And so I'm like ooh, but even like at that time she was like I don't know, I can't remember when Aladdin came out, but like that was like the darkest
yeah.
princess we
Mm-hmm.
had for a while. So I think that also just naturally drew me to her because I was like, well, she doesn't look exactly like me, but she's got something different going on that I feel like I can relate to, even with like her relationship with her friend. Like, I don't know. I think there was something about it that just made me kind of latch onto it where I was like, okay, this is mine. And then Aladdin came out and I was like, love Princess Jasmine again because I think, she was a woman of color and she also has like a stronger personality to her. Um, and, they're always going to have like their issues just
Right.
because of when they were made. But for me, it's one of those things I
Yeah.
can put on and
Same.
still enjoy it.
I don't know. They should just leave the movie alone. Don't try to
Mm-hmm.
like correct it, and obviously no live action that wouldn't work. Just leave it as it is. You know, maybe just release a special type of DVD thing, which I already probably have like two. I don't know. Every time they have this anniversary or whatever, I just get it. I don't know why I have so many Pocahontas, but I can't not get it.
Yes, yes. And they don't do those R&B
I know.
covers of the songs anymore like they used to. And that
Yes.
used to be my jam right there. So
Yeah,
that's another
yeah.
reason to
So
like it.
this movie um was completely unexpected, but is so valid. You put The Prince of Egypt as one of your favorite movies. Why? Not even like no shade or anything like that. I'm just like no one like ever says that. Like it comes up in conversations when we want to talk about like maybe like non-Disney movies or like storytelling or just like
Mm-hmm.
emotional, like creating emotional for the viewers and stuff like that. Also music, right? Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, why is it one of your favorites?
To me, that is just like one movie that I don't know if I can think of another movie that I feel like holds up to it in like quality and how kind
Mm,
of like timeless it is for an animated piece. Like I think it is just so well done. Kind of, and maybe I'm hyping it up like way too much, but like when I first saw it, and even when I go back and rewatch it, I'm like, this is too good. From the visuals, it's like so detailed. The backgrounds are beautiful. I love the character designs. Absolute amazing music. And then they've also taken this story where, like, even if you're not like religious, it's something that you can enjoy, and you get fully immersed in the world. And I think it just like knocks it out the park on all levels. And so have to absolutely give a nod to it because that's something else that I can put on. I can watch that repeatedly throughout the day and not be tired of it because it's just so good. And just even thinking about it, I'm like, I gotta go watch that again
yeah,
later
that
on
is like
tonight.
it is really, really good. So we're gonna start winding down a bit, and there's just something before we get into like the questions. You mentioned a bit prior to this about the importance of peer-to-peer connections. And that's something with diverse tunes we've talked
Mhm.
about a lot, and a lot of what we're doing in that space in terms of building community. A lot of what I do with my show, I say it is talking with my peers and building connections. I have like loosely tried and have had some like uh more senior level people in their careers, but I just end up really just picking people who are all in the same level with me, so to speak. And
Mhm.
what is the importance of just peer to peer networking to you and connecting?
Yeah, well, I think it's so important because it's one of those things where, like, one, you don't know where people are going to end up. It's like not anything that you can predict. And then two, I feel like it just forces you to just be a good person. I think when you like stop looking at relationships as something that's transactional, where it's like, well, what can I get from you? And, where is this even worth anything? Because I've definitely like heard stories from people that have gone to like mixers and things, and they'll try and talk with people and they'll just like very bluntly be like, oh, you're at this level, never mind, and just like walk away and kind of treat them like they're not worth their time because they're not at a certain level yet. And with those peer-to-peer relationships, one, it's like you're building the community, you're around people who can understand your struggle and what you're going through, and they can kind of be with you on that journey. But at the same time, you know who's to say where they're going to be in 5 years? And so if you've kind of kept that relationship up genuinely and not expected anything to come from it beside just having this good relationship, they can help you out in other ways, or they would just kind of want to naturally do that because they think you're a good person. And I think that's what's really helped me with my career. It's like when I, build connections with people, I'm not going into it thinking like, okay, what can I get from this person? How can they help me? How do they help me get to the next level? It's like really like I'm interested in you and what you're trying to do, and I'm curious to know more about you. Let's just talk. And then, we talk here and that's it, great. If we continue that relationship, even better. I don't try to go in with too many expectations besides, I just want to build a friendship here and leave that for what it is. And if, you feel compelled to help me in some way, or if I want to help you in some way, then that comes from a place of, me caring about you and wanting the best for you versus, well, I think I'm going to, if I help you now, you scratch my back and you put me into this role. And I think it starts to get a bit messy in that way. So, not just looking up to network, but looking, right next to you and seeing who's here, what's also in it for them, and having this friendship with me. How can we kind of help each other grow together and push each other and, you know, really look at it that way and not so much as a competition. Because the way that I see it is like when you're looking at like success, if I see one of my friends succeed, I'm not going to be like, oh, that should be me. I can't believe like it's them. Like if I see them succeed, the first thing that goes in my mind is like, oh, if they can do it, that means that I can do it. So like that's actually motivating because it just shows me that the possibility is there. So I don't see it as like a barrier. So if you come at it with like, oh, I'm trying to compete against this person, there's like that saying, like a rising tide raises all ships. Like if they're going up, that means we can all go up. Like how do we all support this and get behind it and support? Like that's what we should be trying to do, not trying to, drag other people down or talk down on them just because they made it to a certain place at a certain time and you feel like you should be there. Everyone's journey looks so different, and you just have to kind of give your journey the space it needs. And if you can find some solid, genuine people that can kind of be there with you as you're on it, that should be the goal. And so that's kind of like the way that I look at it
So
with networking.
poetic snaps, poetic snaps. If I had like sound effects, I don't think I have the appropriate one for that moment, but like that would go there. Maybe an air horn from the East Coast type of thing. No, that's just so true and so important for you to say. And again, my little heart is feeling it. And I think I'm going to take this time to say, and that's what I really appreciate about being connected to you and being able to see your journey, because to your point, it's like she's doing it, I can do it too. But also it's been helpful for just encouraging me to stand firm in like my next step, in that like I am personally just I don't want to be a coordinator anymore. Like, guys, please. Like, I understand, and enough people have been like, well, you never know, you can. And I'm like, no, I don't want to get trapped. Like, I don't want to get trapped. These people are looking for coordinators. And yeah, I could take this opportunity because it's better than nothing, or maybe the team and all this sort of stuff. But like, I'm still going to end up being a coordinator and for the duration of this project. And if they may not have the budget or whatever to have something higher than a coordinator. This is what they want, this is what they're allocating for it, and whatever. So, seeing your career journey from the short time that we've been connected, it has been very inspiring for me again, just as a young Black woman in similar space. Like, I don't view you as competition, which is not a threat or shade to you at all, but I'm just like, yes, she's doing it, I'm gonna be right there too doing it. Like, and with that note too, like, you've been, as well as the people that I've met through social media predominantly, so helpful and supportive in like my job search, people being like, oh, here's a studio you might want to check out, or this opportunity, or this, that, and the third. And it is like, it could be, the community can kind of be what you make it to be at the same time too, like, I think, yeah, there are some factors that happen that like are not pleasant experiences, of course, but in again, in terms of like community and peers and interpersonal relationships and stuff like that, like, you kind of get what you put out at the same time, So I feel like we're all a real reflection of each other and trying to be genuine. We're passionate about the same things, And at least I feel lucky that no one that I'm really cool with has been like turned out to be something unruly, So that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
that. So to pick it back up again, I asked you a couple of questions, and I believe the first question is, what animated character would you say you're most like?
So I went back and forth on this one a little bit. I feel like it's a bit of a tie. So on one side, I would say
Oh,
Princess Tiana, which not just because of the name, but like she's very ambitious and she works hard, and I feel like she's not easily intimidated, and she's just kind of like, she has her goal, she knows what she wants, she goes for it. But then on the other side, make it another Prince of Egypt reference. I really
nice,
like
nice.
Sephora too, because again, she has like that strong, you know, she knows what she's about and she knows who she is, and like she's not going to like bow down and change herself to accommodate or appease other people that are around her despite the situation that she's in. And she finds herself in a pretty difficult one and she still kind of like keeps her head up, and I just love that about her. So I was like, hey, one of
We'll
those
take both
two
of
I can
them.
I can
So
definitely see.
using animated characters, Castier, biopic. I say them interchangeably. I don't know how. I need to just look it up.
Let's see. I thought long and hard about this one. I mean, for myself, I would
Right,
keep one of those
right.
two, put them in there. Um, for my husband, I was like, I could see him as like a General Shang type of character. Like he's
Mm.
very responsible. Like he really kind of like, I don't know. I feel very like, okay, he's organized. He's got this thing under control. I feel confident like leaving things with him. He's very reliable. So I'm like, okay, I could see that. And then I decided to cast my dog. Her name's Momo. She's a 2-year-old Shiba Inu. And I don't, have you seen the anime Spy Family? Are you familiar with that? There's like a little girl character on there named Anya Forger, and she has kind of like these, um, and I know I'm gonna mix the words up. She can basically like read minds. I don't know remember the official word for it, but she's like super cute. But she definitely finds herself in mischief and trouble. And I was like, that reminds me of Momo, so I'm gonna give that to her, and that would be my cast.
So, lastly, if you were stuck on a desert island, what two characters, animated characters, would you prefer to have with you?
Okay, I decided to go with one of them would be because I figured like, okay, I need some people who can like cover my blind spots. So I went with Moana as one because I feel like she can hold her own. She knows what's going on. You know, she's used to island life. She could maybe give me some tips. So I said, keep her. Yeah, you know, she could fish, she can make a boat, so maybe we can get off. And then this one, I don't know how I got to this one, but going back to Pocahontas, I was like, why not Kocoum? I feel like he's got that protector vibe to him. I would feel very safe if he was on the island. Again, I feel like he would know what he's doing and like surviving out there. Because that's the one thing that I don't have the skill set for. I'm definitely more like glamping and that type of thing. So I need people who know how to survive and can teach me to do the
Right.
same. So
I
it'd be
love
those
that.
two.
Well, Tiara, this brings us to the end of our episode. So if the people want to connect with you, maybe learn a little bit more about you, maybe they're seeking advice or just trying to start to build their networking, how should they go about just reaching out to you?
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn. It'll be Tiara Little Ito now, ITO. So I just
Oh,
recently got married, trying to make that transition with the names. And also on Twitter, which I believe it's just underscore Tiara Little. And I'm just available there. So reach out anytime, send any questions.
love
Happy
that.
to
Love that.
connect with
Thank you so
anyone.
much for taking the time and chatting with me and, just being your authentic self. We love it. Tiara brings like this sense of calmness to the conversation, which I really, really appreciate. And I just knew she was a Taurus. I just knew it. And so, as she said, you can connect with her on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can find that in the episode description and in the show notes. Me, you can find me on all social media platforms at Simply Robotics, SIMPLYROBOTIX. I am also on LinkedIn. You can find all that sort of stuff through my website, simplyrobotics.com. There you can get the podcast planner workbook. You can book consultations or any sort of audio video editing services, Patreon, where you can watch this episode in its entirety. And there's going to be more stuff happening. I am getting back into live streaming on YouTube specifically first. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, as random things are just going to start popping up with that. So with all that being said, thank you so much. Let me know what you think about this episode via social media. If it's on comments, if it's just, messaging back, replying back to my newsletter, that people have been doing that. That's really fun. Commenting on Patreon. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.